Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. How y'all doing? Let's talk about Wrestle Kingdom 17. It aired Wednesday, January the 4th, 2023. And I did not see the entire show, which I wouldn't watch anyway. But I get up at absurd hours to work anyway. So when my alarm clock went off, I just got up and turned on the show. So that was pretty much it. I had a day off anyway, so I'm not going out of my way, to be quite honest. So when I turned the show on, Mercedes had already debuted. It was in the middle of FTR versus Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto. But we're going to talk about Mercedes debuting first. I didn't see the match that she debuted in. It had already occurred. But for everybody, New Japan World did upload her entrance and her segment so that everybody could see it. So that was a blessing. Thank you very much, New Japan Pro Wrestling, for finally being viewer friendly in some way. So let's talk about Mercedes and her debut. For starters, let's talk about her name. She is now going by Mercedes Monet. And I'm not sure if it's Mercedes Monet or Mercedes Monet. It's something like that. So she's going by Mercedes. She comes out and it reminded me a lot of Aaliyah. And I think in the women are kind of obsessed with Aaliyah. What was that movie she's in? It was a vampire movie where she had like the crazy headdress on or whatever. I've seen like plenty of women do this cosplay now. So that's kind of the direction she was going in, was the big headdress or whatever. She takes it off and her hair is like lava. It's like lava colored, yet also still blue. It's the idea, of course, is that she's burning away the blue, and underneath is going to be like a bright orange, yellow kind of thing that she's going to go for. So that's kind of the idea. The theme song, of course, is completely new. It's sampling Crisscross Jump, which is a sample of, I believe, I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. So the bass line from doom, 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 Crisscross is in there. I like that. I thought that was dope. At first I was kind of like, but then over time I kind of got used to it. I watched the segment more than once, so I listened to the song more than once, and I was like, okay, I get the theme song with the Monet, and it's like, I don't know, because it's her voice on it, but I like the song overall. The theme song is okay. So then she comes out. Kairi had defeat Tam Nakano. I heard the match was 5 minutes. Who cares? I don't care one way or the other about how much time women get on New Japan shows. They're lucky to be there, as far as I'm concerned. So what ends up happening is they shake hands. Then Mercedes Monet tries to use some kind of new maneuver on Kairi. It involves her picking up Kairi in a gory driver. That's what it looks like. It looks like it's going to be a gory bomb into an arm lock or something like that, or a DDT or something. Whatever it was botched. It did not look good. Kairi did not sell it well. What ends up happening is she just kind of got scooped up, spun around, and went down. They both went down. Mercedes had her arm, but Kairi wasn't moving. And then Kairi just kind of laid out as if, that was the move. That's what it was supposed to be. So I was like, okay, we're not we're not looking good here. Then the promo comes. And the promo is mid. Let's put it like that. I think that's the best way to put it. Nobody in their right mind can say it was great. It was wholly mid. So, in the promo, she talks about Kairi making history, but she knows how to make history herself. And then she says that she's the blueprint, the standard, the CEO, that's her new gimmick, of this women's division in New Japan and Stardom. Then she says that at Battle of the Valley, which is going to be February the 18th, that she's going to take the championship and bankrupt Kyrie, called her a bitch and all kind of stuff. I was greatly disappointed in the promo. The move and the promo were very disappointing. Because she had 6 months to come up with the promo. She had 6 months to come up with something impactful. The look is fine. How she looks, all right. It's a story being told with how she looks and the music and everything. It's supposed to be an outgrowth from the Sasha Banks persona to the Mercedes persona, which is fine. If you look at the character development of Sasha Banks, the character is based very heavily on hip hop and musicians and stuff like that. So this seems to be a continuance of that theme, which is smart. You know, she's not leaving behind Sasha Banks completely, but she is going in terms of this character is an evolved version of Sasha Banks, where the base is still going to be there. But there's going to be a different approach. So it's, from a character perspective, it was fine. How she sounded and looked, that's the problem where I'm going because the move that she tried to do didn't work. And she didn't sound very confident. Some people try to chalk it up to nervousness, which is entirely possible. But at the same time, you had 6 months, you had weeks to prepare for this. You know, I don't understand how I don't know, whatever. But so it was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't fantastic. Blew my mind away. But it was all right. And you can see that, you know, at least she's going for something there in terms of her character. She's not just coming in to do work rate stuff. She might actually try to evolve the Sasha Banks character a little bit. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. And I actually think that's a big thumbs up. Because usually when guys leave, they either have bad attitudes or they try to drop what they were doing completely. But this is, of course, different. So she was smart enough to understand that there needs to be enough elements of Sasha Banks still there for her fan base, instead of just going in a completely different direction and, you know, cutting them off. Because now people who are fans of the Sasha Banks character can continue being fans of the Mercedes Monet character because it's going to be very similar. All right, sweet, that's good. Apparently a lot of a couple of WWE wrestlers went over there. Bailey apparently was there. They said that they showed her in the original broadcast. They showed her in the crowd. I did not see that. Apparently somebody else flew over there. I don't remember who it was. Tamina and several other people were very excited for her. They were up early to support, which was good. You know, I like that. I don't mind that, you know, friends flew over to Japan to see her. I don't see that being a big deal. It's a big moment for her career as somebody, you know, and if you're friends outside the ring, why wouldn't you support that? Shortly, what was this, late Tuesday, Sasha Banks sent out a blast of thank you hashtags to Vince McMahon and Triple H and William Regal and a bunch of other people. And the Vince McMahon thing for some reason was controversial, which it shouldn't have been. She even thanked Sasha Banks, which I thought was that was one that raised my eyebrow, because I was like, But again, if you understand what she's trying to do here, she's trying to say that Sasha Banks helped her get where she is. William Regal, Triple H, Vince McMahon, yada yada yada. And Sasha Banks is a different person than who she is. But she's also trying to evolve from that character. So apparently this was like the first time any diva stans or people who are just legitimately just fans of Sasha Banks have ever tried watching New Japan. And I think they got their fill and it kind of just moved on. You know, like, I don't think they watched anything else on this show, which is fine. You know, I'm not one of those people who think that it was going to be some huge crossover audience. I figured it was going to be a nice little bump, mostly from Kenny Omega. due to, we'll talk about that later. But I think it'd be a nice little bump, a nice little diverse audience because of the Sasha Banks introduction. But I didn't figure they would stick around and end up becoming fans of New Japan. They're fans of Sasha Banks, and that's kind of it. And it's interesting to do that. So New Japan might actually have struck something. Now, as far as Battle at the Valley, I'm guessing this is not going to be the main event. It's going to be Kyrie versus Sasha Banks. I'm guessing that's not the main event of this show. They're going to likely defend the world title on that show too. But it's going to be in San Jose. Okay. So, and I'm guessing that, Mercedes is going to win the title because she did tweet out that this is what she wanted. Now, the question then becomes, is she going to debut in AEW on the 11th? Some people seem to think so. I think that the opportunity, of course, is there. And I don't think it'll make much difference, I guess if you want to get that audience, the crew, quote unquote, to watch AEW, it's a good idea to give Sasha Banks whatever she wants, but it's the same thing as when you bring in anybody. It does not, single talents do not matter that much. I've said that 100 times on this channel. It's not just me making up shit because, she left WWE. I don't care. Individual talents don't matter that much. It only matters what you do with the individual talent. You're only going to get the initial bump of people crossing over, and then people are going to peter out later. So it doesn't matter where you put person A in the pro wrestling business. They only draw so much. What makes them draw is what you do with them. So if he wants to give Mercedes all this money, fine, but you better spend some money on that women's division. Meaning, the moment she comes in and she's the highest paid woman on the roster, that's going to cause problems in your locker room. Everybody's going to look around and start saying, why is she getting the big paycheck? And now you're going to have to deal with that issue, So and then you're going to have to pay people to work with her, and then hopefully pay people to improve so they don't give her concussions, drop her on her goddamn head, kick her in the face and knock her teeth out or anything like that. That's because she's now an investment. She's not just a regular wrestler on the roster like some of the other couple $100,000 you're giving to these other people. You're going to be in this locked in here at least for some millions. Because if she turned down millions, or at least $1 million, to be in WWE, she's definitely going to be not coming to AEW for less. So at that point, you're going to be talking about an investment in your women's division. At that point, you're going to be talking about people who've been there, Britt Baker, Jade Cargill, looking at you like, okay, we see where the money cap is now. So next round of negotiations, okay, where's the paper? That's going to be, just had the situation with MJF. It doesn't change just because they're women. They're definitely going to want more money. At that point, you're really going to ask the question, who do I need? Who do I don't need? And you're going to have to find her some opponents. You can't book the women's division that you have because it's not going to be interesting enough to people outside of the hardcore fans and the couple of crew who watch the show because Mercedes is on it. She's definitely going to have to improve in terms of her promo, but it seems like that'll come in time. So if Tony Khan wants to spend the money, she's going to be there. No doubt about that. It wouldn't be a big surprise to me. It wouldn't, bother me any. I mean, she's just another wrestler going to AEW. It's all going to be about what you do with her. Is she going to be able to get something out of Jamie Hayter outside of a good match? Is she going to be able to get something out of Jade Cargill other than good match? Is one of these people who are one of these untrained idiots like Ty Mello going to drop her on her fucking head? Those are going to be questions that we're going to ask going into, this Mercedes and AEW thing. that I think should be addressed before it actually occurs. But I know how everybody is. Everybody's a fanboy. Oh my God, it's so awesome. It's so crazy. It's so great. I love pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is the best. You know, yada yada yada. She's the greatest of all time. All that stuff. It's like, okay, it'll be a nice little shake up because it's a pretty big star jumping ship to AEW, but she's immediately going to need some help because alone she can't do much for your program, you know, and that's just a fact. So you're going to have to do something. And Sasha Banks as a character was crafted with years of storyline and characters and opponents built up over time. You're not going to be able to change that. It's going to be another CM Punk situation where you're going to have to give it a couple of months. Because initially, there's going to be a honeymoon period where everybody's going to be very excited. And then that excitement will die down. This is just like her popping up in New Japan. You know, they already playing with fire by having Mercedes say, oh, well, I'm not wrestling until February. Okay, so she probably won't be in the Royal Rumble at that point. Because then she's definitely going to have to, because she's going to be under contract in New Japan to show up in February. Now, is that possible that she could still do both? I guess, you know, that possibility, I guess, is out there. The likelihood, I think, is minimal. I think it's probably more likely if she's going to end up in AEW and work New Japan and AEW and work Stardom. So, I guess if I had to put a percentage on it, I think the percentage that she jumped ship to AEW is like 70%. The chances are that she, you know, wrestles in WWE or comes back for the Royal Rumble, I think that's about 20 to 15%. And I think the fact that she just kind of floats around in the independents, I think with her price tag, she's going to pretty much be out of the independents. So I'm thinking she's definitely going to do like AEW and New Japan and maybe select independents who have some money. But I don't really see this being some game-changing situation right now. It's going to take some money and some effort. Let's see who's going to try to put that in. All right. So that's not the only story from Wrestle Kingdom. FTR lost their final set of tag team championships to Bashiman, a.k.a. Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto. The match itself was meh, because who gives a fuck about Yoshihashi and Hiroshi Goto? So FTR lost the belts. They no longer have any tag team championships. And the losing streak continues as people are talking about the countdown to April, where essentially FTR is expected to jump back to WWE. Dax Harwood got a lot of heat for his comments. Of course, some people have claimed it's not as much heat as people expect, but there are some people backstage in AEW that are unhappy with his podcast and some of the comments that he made about in his podcast specifically about, you know, the CM Punk situation and some of the other situations that have occurred since they've been in AEW. But I knew that was coming. And, you know, it goes without saying that there was going to be people who were upset. I think when the podcast was kind of floated about and the guy is talking about, you know, backstage stuff in AEW and giving his opinion about things, I kind of figured it was going to be a heat magnet of a show, you know. As far as them going back to WWE, I don't know, because this new show just started. How would, you know, the show be affected? He just started this show in mid-December. And for him to just say all of a sudden, either A, he's going to shut down the show because he's going to WWE. B, he's going to go to WWE. He's not going to talk about anything that's on the show. Talk about anything that happens in WWE on the show. You know, that's just like Road Dogg and fucking Bruce Pritchard, who both have podcasts about WWE and don't talk about what's going on the main roster, no current events. That loses a lot of the interest in the program, because a lot of people are going to be like, okay, you're not talking about anything recent, so it's all going to be old stuff. But then you also work in the company in WWE, so it's going to be a little bit different. That might color some of your, you know, the way you comment on things that happened in the past under the past regime, because there's a lot of people who were under Vince that are still there, Road Dogg being one of them. And then there's situations like that, like, okay, are we just gonna air out Road Dogg in December and then go work with Road Dogg in April? You know, who knows? So there's a lot of questions there. Or it could just be that they're about to double down on their AEW thing, and, you know, maybe AEW figures if they drop all these belts, they can now focus on them. I don't know. But the match itself seemed fine. I wasn't blown away with it. Yoshihashi sucks. I don't care, you know, how many times they try to tell me he doesn't. He does. And Goto is, like I said, he's a Dolph Ziggler of New Japan. He's just a guy who's just permanently stuck in the middle. And anytime anybody get behind him, they are greatly disappointed because he never really goes anywhere. So, yeah, that's that. The New Japan Television Championship, the first ever match, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Ren Narita. Zack Sabre Jr. wins the match via submission. Zack Sabre Jr. debuted his blonde hair on this show. And I just say, like, man, New Japan is a haven for boring British, European, American guys. It's like the more boring and lacking of personality you are, the more successful you tend to be in New Japan. The only good thing about this television championship is that the matches have 15-minute time limits. So they can guarantee to me that, you know, Zack Sabre Jr. got 15 minutes maximum on this television, rather than him being on TV 40 minutes of, you know, grabbing wrists and just generally being boring and stupid. The only good thing about Zack Sabre Jr. is that he does work a very stiff style. I like the grappling style and I like the stiffness of some of his stuff, but generally speaking, he's just super fucking boring, and I cannot stand him. Moving on, Carl Anderson lost the never open weight belt to Tama Tonga. Tama Tonga remains very cool to watch. Carl Anderson is a bullet head. Who cares about this fucking never belt? I'm thinking this is the end for Carl Anderson in New Japan. I'm guessing, especially after the debacle of Saudi Arabia, where he had to miss that booking, and New Japan thought that he was going to continue to show up. It ain't happening. So Tama Tonga as a solo act is fine. I really wish he was on American TV, because I like Tama Tonga. But, you know, some guys are New Japan loyalists. So the match was fine, though. It is what it is. It was a 6-man tag, the final Great Muta match, his last match in the Tokyo Dome. Keiji Muto, Shota Umino, and Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Bushi, Sanada, and Tetsuya Naito. And Keiji Muto, Shota Umino, and Hiroshi Tanahashi won. The team was billed as the past, present, and future of New Japan, with Keiji Muto being the past, Tanahashi being the present, and Shota Umino being the future. They really put over Shota Umino here, because he's the one who got the pin. I believe it was over Bushi. So Shota Umino, of course, is the kid that was kidnapped by John Moxley like 2 or 3 years ago. And he's back from excursion now. And he's going by the Roughneck Shota Umino. Roughneck? Okay. All right. His dad is like some kind of famous referee. I think his dad's Red Shoes, isn't it? I'm not sure. But Umino was decent as a young lion. He was decent here too. This match wasn't terrible. You know, it was just, I wanted more for Naito and Sanada. Sanada is like one of those guys who is like perpetually over, but they don't do anything with him. And Naito is the same thing, where he's just kind of like, oh yeah, everybody loves this guy. Why doesn't he actually like win stuff and then like be in main events? It's like, well, New Japan just doesn't give a fuck about him. You know, so he's in a nice spot. He gets to wrestle, you know, the Great Muta in his final match, but they got to do the job. And, you know, they shot an angle with them in the Noah guys. It didn't matter to me because I didn't know who the Noah guys were, so sorry. Moving on. There was a 4-way for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. Taiji Ishimori defends against El Desperado, Hiromu Takahashi, and Master Wato. And Master Wato, way to the Grandmaster Master Wato, he feels like a joke. Him being here feels like a favor to somebody because nobody cares about this fucking guy. He still doesn't get any reaction. I remember when he debuted to no reaction. It's been crickets ever since. I don't get it. This match was fun though. And of course New Japan, their booking is as stale as WWE's because, Hiromu Takahashi won. LOL. Of course he won. He's the most over, junior wrestler in New Japan. So no surprise there. And because it was no surprise, that kind of took away from me. But it was still a well-worked match. And it was kind of fun to watch. So it wasn't bad. Okay. So the double main event time. Kenny Omega defeated Will Ospreay in a match that was masterpiece, classic, 10 stars, 42 stars, Tokyo Dome match for everybody that exists in the superstructure, the Congress of pro wrestling fans. And I call them the Congress of pro wrestling fans because they think their opinion matters more than everybody else's. So those guys who are super fans of both guys already and are completely incapable of telling the truth think this match is the greatest match of all time already, and match of the year already, and that the promo before the match was the best promo that they've ever done between the two of them. And I watched both. I can tell you first, let's talk about the promo. The promo had Will Ospreay be very upset that Kenny Omega was sort of downplaying the audience of New Japan because they've had that sort of no cheering rule for like 2 years that they couldn't cheer. And so Will Ospreay was very upset and starts talking about all the COVID protocols he had to go through, while Kenny Omega has just had to drive from his house in Florida to Daly's place to shoot. And he also had the benefit of going to Tennessee to work in Impact, while for Will Ospreay, a 12-hour flight has turned into a 15-hour flight, and then 2 weeks of living in a hotel and not being able to go to his friend's funeral, and how serious this is for him. And I said to myself, okay, all of that is great, but you're looking at Kenny Omega as if Kenny Omega did all that stuff. He didn't make that. He didn't make the world so difficult. He didn't do that. Being mad at him because you had to go through all that stuff in order to make the rounds in New Japan doesn't build up heat for the match between the two of you. It builds up the heat between you and the fucking government. So, the government is the one who did all that stuff. But I get why they brought it up. It just didn't seem to make sense to me. I guess that since the pandemic is officially over in Japan now, Kenny Omega could come back, and he's been acting like a really big star. He's been acting like Kenny Omega is about Japan. And they treat him like a big star over there. So that's fine. I get it. But this whole thing was all about Will Ospreay demanding that Kenny Omega pass him the torch of being the top gaijin. And I'm just kind of like, okay, sure. So they go out there, and that was sort of what they were going for in the match. So Kenny Omega, his entrance is the Sephiroth theme from Final Fantasy VII. So he's nerded out. They're having, as somebody gracefully put on Twitter, they're having a nerd off. So Kenny Omega is apparently still doing Sephiroth cosplay. He didn't even use his old New Japan theme. He's just using straight Final Fantasy theme now. So, okay. As somebody who played that game back in 1997 when it was out, I always loved the Sephiroth theme. I thought it was great. I wish that somebody that fit the bill and the grandeur of the character was using that theme and not a goofy idiot like Kenny Omega. But I mean, it is what it is. While Will Ospreay was, sort of Will Ospreay. It was an interesting match in terms of how it was put together. Both guys were showing that they were equals physically, and that they were able to do the same moves similarly. So there was both hands-free hurricanranas, and, you know, Will Ospreay will counter it to try to show that he's a little bit better. You had Will Ospreay counter a snapdragon off the second rope by landing on his feet, which was actually a pretty nice move. Despite the fact that I don't really don't care that much about the gymnastics, it doesn't stop it from being impressive. So it's very impressive if you can, you know, get thrown from the top rope and then you can flip and land on your feet. It's still very impressive. They utilized weapons. I didn't know this match was no disqualifications, but it was what it was. Kenny Omega ended up doing a double stomp through a table onto Will Ospreay. Then later on, Will Ospreay was busted open, and that's kind of when the match really started to get interesting, because Kenny Omega now starts to hit big moves, big power drivers, and he gave him a German suplex from the second rope and all kind of stuff in order to try to stop Will Ospreay, and Will Ospreay, of course, was kicking out of everything. Then Ospreay kind of fires up with Kawada kicks and a chop to the chest. I wish that we could have transitioned into him firing up a little bit better, other than just, it happens. Like, you know, like maybe Omega misses something, like he tries to do a splash or something, and Ospreay moves, and then he goes into the Kawada kicks and the chops and stuff like that, firing up. That would have been better. But, you know, they haven't gotten, despite the fact this is a masterpiece classic between two of the best of all time, they haven't evolved to that point yet where they transition from, I'm almost dead because I'm bloody and getting beat up, to this is my chance. They haven't evolved to that point yet. You know, so whatever. But the match got interesting once Will Ospreay was bleeding. There's a bunch of V-triggers in the match on the ropes and stuff like that. The finishing sequence came from Kenny Omega running his knee into Will Ospreay's head several times. Then he utilizes Kota Ibushi's finisher, the Kamigoye, which is supposed to be the evolved version of Nakamura's finish. So he's holding the arms of Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay spits on him in defiance. From there, Kenny Omega does the Kamigoye, hits the one-winged angel, and pins Will Ospreay in a match that was better than their usual matches. It's definitely better for Will Ospreay than his usual performances, but in no way is an all-time classic that you absolutely must see. Wow, wow, wow. I love it. If you are into both of these guys, you will like this match. That is without a doubt. And most of the people, and the interesting thing about it, to the response to this match to me, is that these guys can say the same thing after the match that they would have said before it. You know, they didn't go into the match in any way. Some of them even said, oh, this is a WrestleMania type of situation where the main event's not going to matter because they're going to blow it out of the water. And then they went and turned right around and said that, how do you follow this fantastic, stupendous 10-star classic? How do you follow this? You can't. There's nothing that the other guys can do. It's a WrestleMania 18 situation where, goddamn, Rock and Hogan just happened. So now you got to have Triple H versus Chris Jericho. Wow, wow, wow. And I was like, come on. Just turn it down a little bit. You know, like, let's just review it fairly. Kenny Omega did some goofy stuff, like he did the shining spot in this match where there was a hole in the table. He put his head in the table and did the ha ha ha, similar to the scene from The Shining where Jack Nicholson chops the door and then puts his face in the door. You know, there was some silliness there. Again, I said the transitions from Will Ospreay being beat up to Will Ospreay firing up in the middle, not the middle, but maybe the later half of the match, wasn't crisp that you would expect, especially if you've watched enough wrestling to know how firing up is supposed to work. It wasn't the best. And you start with Kawada kicks when the guy is standing up straight. So it wasn't like Omega was bent over for any reason. It was straight up, he just grabbed his head, pulled his head down, and started kicking him in the face. Like, you were just nearly dead seconds ago. But, again, it was still good. Athletically, both of these guys are tremendous. You can't take that part away. My part has always been they have no fucking personality and they're boring as hell. Which, you know, that opinion has not changed. Neither one of them walked out of this match with a personality. So if you are a fan of these guys, great, you're going to like it. If you just like the athleticism of professional wrestling sometimes, which I do, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate sometimes you watching a match out of context, watching a match just for a match's sake. This is fine. I don't think I need to see this again. I may watch it again, but I don't think I need to see it again. So don't let these people trick you into thinking it's the greatest match of all time. It was a great match for this show though, because this is something for, again, that Congress of wrestling fans, the Fightfuls and the Wrestling Incs and the Bodyslam.nets and all those guys. They love this kind of stuff. The average person probably went back to bed after the Mercedes stuff, or they just didn't see it and don't care, and it kind of is what it is. The main event was similar. Kazuchika Okada defeats Jay White to win the IWGP World Heavyweight title for the second time. But we know it's more like the 12th because, there was a title that predates this one. So the show ends with Okada, cheering and leading the audience in a cheer for Inoki and all this kind of stuff. And his next opponent apparently is going to be Shingo Takagi, who's going to do the challenge. And Shingo Takagi was champion around this point last year, which is part of his promo. But he got booted out of the main event all the way down to King of Pro Wrestling, the goofy King of Pro Wrestling title. So he fell off the face of the earth. And then out of nowhere, they brought him out to challenge Okada for the title. I was like, oh God, whatever. It's classic New Japan. They hold on to top guys way too long. Jay White was really good here, but you knew he was just in this match to lose, and that took a lot of the heat away. And now you're just kind of watching athletics because it's the story. You know what the story is. The story is Okada wins. LOL. That's the story. So it's the question of how do we get there isn't really all that impressive. Also, Okada continues to use the money clip, which is still the worst finisher for a top guy in the entire business. The crowd, it's been 2 years of him using the money clip, and he has won matches with it. And it's still not over. People still do not care about the money clip. They do not care about that move at all. He's still doing it. I don't get it. I don't know why he fell in love with this move, and now all of a sudden he won't stop doing it. I don't know why the fans hate it so much. They just kind of sit quietly and watch it. They were extremely excited for a drop kick, but when he breaks out the money clip, they just look at it like, okay, you're taking a break. All right, whatever. I think they both kicked out of each other's finishers at one point. The final run of moments in this match had them actually try to utilize each other's finish, where Jay White tried to use the Rainmaker. Okada ended up hitting the Blade Runner before he used the Rainmaker to win. To me, I'm tired of Okada, and Jay White's very good, but he's kind of stuck in the number 2 position. He's going to be there, well, at least number 2, at least. So he's just kind of stuck there perpetually for all time. And that's just kind of how it is, That's just kind of how it is. So the only story that really came out of this thing is Will Ospreay is disappointed that he lost to Kenny Omega. And he's on his final year of his contract in New Japan. He's going to give himself 1 year to fulfill the one thing that he feels like he needs to do in New Japan, or he's going to quit and go somewhere else. That would make sense if he hadn't done interviews saying that he doesn't see himself leaving New Japan. I'd say, well, you've done a great job of negotiating by basically telling New Japan a year before the contract is over that you don't looking to go anywhere else. He also said that he's skittish about wrestling in the United States. It makes him nervous. And I was kind of like, great. So we don't have to worry about you polluting AEW. But I mean, Will Ospreay is, if you can watch Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay is just more of the same. It's in my opinion, it's some of the same shit, So it's like, it's more of the same. If you like Kenny Omega, you should like Will Ospreay. I don't like Kenny Omega that much, and I like Will Ospreay significantly less. You know, at least I can understand Kenny Omega. Half the time I can't even understand Will Ospreay. He also made some comments about Seth Rollins. Basically, he wanted Seth Rollins to come to Japan and wrestle him because, you know, him going to WWE is a non-starter. And I figured Seth Rollins laughed at that, considering why the fuck would he do that? You know, like, why the fuck would he come to Japan to wrestle Will Ospreay? And Will Ospreay is nervous about wrestling in the United States. You know, that's weird. If I was Seth Rollins, I'd look at that and like, top guys don't talk like that. You know, top guys can do it anywhere. Wouldn't matter. Hulk Hogan didn't say, "Whoa, Will, brother, you got to come to the Garden, brother." No, shit. If you're gonna, go where the money is. You know, if it means he had to go do, you know, arm bars in Japan to get the cash, he's going. You know, if he's got to go do it in Montreal, he's gonna go do it. Fuck. You know, I don't know what's up with these new generation of wrestlers where they're kind of, oh my God, I'm nervous. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Like, what the fuck? You know, just, I understand being nervous going somewhere you've never gone before, you know, like Mercedes' situation where she's never wrestled in, you know, Japan long term before. Yeah, that's different for her. It's completely different. But Will Ospreay's been in the business 10 years. They've been talking about how he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time for 6 years or 7 years or something like that. They've attacked legends to defend Will Ospreay. And he's like, come on, bro. You got to wrestle me in Japan, bro. And it's like, oh, who the fuck are you? You're the guy who's scared to wrestle in the United States. Nobody gives a fuck about you. You know, nobody wants to take you. Nobody's going to kidnap you. What, at worst, people are going to be like, yeah. You know, discount Kenny Omega is back. And I think that's what he's scared of. You know, but this is the position that he wanted, you know. That's the position he wants in Japan, is to be discount Kenny Omega, but I don't know. That's the only real story coming out of the show. FTR losing titles, so what they're going to do, Mercedes and Will Ospreay, is he going to sign to AEW and come back and wrestle in America? But you don't have to worry about Will Ospreay for a year, so it is what it is. The most pressing thing, of course, is Mercedes going to pop up in 2 weeks on Dynamite, and is FTR going to pop up in April back in WWE, both of which are pretty good question marks if you watch this show. But if you just don't care about Japanese wrestling, then this show won't mean anything to you whatsoever, because it's very heavily on Japanese wrestling, and it matters mostly to that congress of wrestling fans who think that everything that they do is more important and everything that they like is the best. So there that is. But overall, from what I saw of the show, I enjoyed it. Sometimes it's not bad to watch wrestling and it's just matches. And plus I got to take a break because there were matches on this show that I didn't need to watch, and therefore I didn't watch them. So I just watched like half the show. But I think everything that I did watch is something I would have watched anyway, except for Tama Tonga and Carl Anderson. I probably would not have watched that on my own. Maybe the 6-man tag, I probably wouldn't have watched that either on my own, but they weren't around long enough to, you know, make me upset, which is usually New Japan's problem, is they have a nonsense match be 30 minutes. But here they gave pretty much everything a respectable time that before I started grumbling, it was over. So that was good. All right. So that's Wrestle Kingdom 17. It was a pretty good show from what I saw. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, daddy.